All right. So again, thanks for being here. This is the NC State Prague information session. The aim for today is basically to give you all some some information about our programs. We do run a lot of programs throughout the year. So we want to give you that through some slides. We'll be talking to you a little bit, but also, and probably more importantly, we have on this call a couple former participants. And so always the best way to learn about programs, I think, is to hear from some of our quote unquote Prague alums. And so we're fortunate to have a couple of them on this call. We'll get to meet them here in a second. So just, the usual Zoom housekeeping note, just if you can mute yourself if you're not talking. We're going to save some time at the end for a Q&A. So you should have plenty of time to ask those burning questions that you may have, something that we maybe don't address on this session. So today, again, it's designed to give you some more info about programs. We don't go too into depth in any one particular topic. We kind of give you an overview today on location, programs, classes, housing, and sort of application process. The focus is slightly on our spring programs and our spring application cycle. The reason being, we do have that opening next month. So that's sort of the emphasis. So with that, I'll go ahead and get us going here. So today, again, we'll be talking about all our programs in brief, but we will also have next week 2 sessions specifically on one program called the Shelton Global Leadership Minor and another on the Prague Connect program. So if you're on this call and you're really, really keen on learning more about those 2 programs, definitely please join us then. But again, we'll touch upon a little bit of everything here today. All right, so before we go any further, just a quick introduction. As you can see on my screen, I'm Alex Wessner. I am one of 2 people of the Raleigh that makes up the Raleigh staff of the NC State European Center in Prague. Most of our staff are in Prague. So if you're over there, you'll get to meet our wonderful full and part-time staff over there. So I'm 50% of the staff, and I'll pass it over to the other 50%, Maggie, for her introduction.
Yes. Hi, I'm the other half. But yeah, my name is Maggie Agnew. I'm a program coordinator. And like Alex said, I'm also based on the Raleigh side, but we're over here in Holmes Hall if you find yourself on campus and have any questions. But yeah, that's our office basically.
And also so our kind of role responsibility is we work with folks who are thinking about the programs. They're sort of at the early stages. They want some more information, they have questions. And then when they advance to apply, we help out with the application process, eventually to the visa process, if that's for their program, if that's needed. And then all the way up to what we call sort of the departure point. So when you fly over to Prague, that's sort of when we quote unquote hand you over to the rest of our staff in Prague. So you work closely with Maggie and myself. If you continue with applications and continue on in the program, you'll see us a lot and work with us closely. So yeah, that's the Raleigh team. And I'll let Maggie introduce our special guest today.
Yeah, so we are lucky to have 2 former alumni join us to talk about their experiences and share some of the things that they experienced while they were in Prague. So I'll let both of them introduce themselves. We have Tyra and Delaney. So whoever wants to go first, just briefly introduce yourself.
I can go first. So I'm Tyra. I did fall 2022 classic program in Prague. And I study English literature and women, gender, and sexuality studies. And I am going into my 5th year of that soon.
Hi, I'm Delaney. I was part of the Prague Connect program in fall of 2021. I currently am a communication, media, and journalism student, but when I was studying abroad, I was exploratory studies.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. So we'll have the privilege of hearing more from Tyra and Delaney throughout this session. Before we kind of get there, though, I want to give you sort of a brief overview of the center. So we offer NC State programs throughout the year. We offer different types of programs ranging from 2 weeks all the way up to 15 weeks. So all of the programs, either wholly or in part, they take place at our center in Prague. And when we refer to that, it means a lot, but also means it's a physical place, and you can actually see it here in that top photo. So that yellow building with the red flag, that is the center. So it may not seem like much from this distant picture, but there's actually a whole lot to this building. So all of your classroom space is there, your sort of social space, kitchens, outdoor space, courtyards. There's a whole bunch of rooms and buildings and cool nooks and crannies in the center. And so you end up spending a lot of time there. It's in a beautiful location, right in the historic heart of Prague. Now, one thing I like to emphasize that sort of sets us apart from other study abroad programs through NC State is that when you're on our programs, these are NC State classes that you take. And we'll talk a little bit more about academics shortly. But we offer NC State classes. Our faculty are approved by the NC State home departments. So this you can think of in a nutshell as basically NC State's campus extended into the heart of Europe. And so this is NC State program, NC State classes, you get NC State credit. So that's kind of where it's a little bit different than other study abroad programs. We also have a really robust support system when you're over there. So some study abroad programs, it's works more on an exchange. You go over there by yourself. You sort of have to kind of figure things out on your own. That's not this. So these are group programs where you go over with fellow NC State students, people you may know already, people you may become friends with, but they're all pretty much from NC State. And you go as a group, you go together, you live in the same housing together. We'll look at that later. And you take classes together. And so it has that sort of support with each other. But also, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of staff there on site as well. So we have about a dozen full and part-time staff, and their offices are in the same building. And so that's really nice. If you need something, they have a really kind of open door policy. You can pop in and get support. So they're always there. So you have that support with you. You have other NC State students there as well. So this, again, is an extension, essentially, of NC State's campus right in the heart of Europe. We do, for that reason, and for the reasons I just kind of explained, Prague is the most popular study abroad destination for all NC State programs, all NC State students. We send, it says here at the bottom, over 200 students a year, but we're going to have to change that because this calendar year it's looking like over 300. So it just becomes more and more popular, it seems, which is great. A lot of students get to experience this wonderful place in the heart of Prague. So you see a few pictures at the bottom there. This is a small sample of some of the rooms, some of the space available in the center. Again, it's a pretty big place. And you can explore more of those photos on our webpage if you wish. So that's sort of situating us in Prague in the center in our location. Let's talk a little bit now about programs. So our main program, sort of what would be most closely our regular program, is what we call Classic. So our Classic program is sort of our bread and butter program, and we run 3 versions of that, spring, summer, and fall. So in this, the way it's set up is you basically pick the courses you want to take. So we have about 30 classes you can choose from in our catalog, and we'll talk about that a little more later. You just craft your own schedule among those courses, as long as you're full-time enrolled. And then you get to sort of take NC State classes in the heart of Prague. So this is our regular program. We do offer activities and events built into the program throughout the semester. Orientation, in-country and out-of-country excursions for our semester-long versions. We have a lot of different optional activities and programming throughout the semester as well. But the spring fall version is a full semester, so you're expecting like 15 weeks. You're looking at full semester. Summer is about 6 weeks, so you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. Now, if you're curious which is more popular, by far the summer is, because normally students don't have plans in the summer, right? So you can knock out some classes, get ahead of your schedule, and have a nice experience while you're over there. We have about this coming year, it looks like about over 130 students going on our summer Classic program. Our spring and fall versions pick up about 40 to 50. So by comparison, to give you an idea. But regardless of the size of the program, your classes, you'll have small class sizes. And so most classes won't have more than, say, a dozen students. So you get that really good class learning environment, nice faculty to student ratio. And our faculty, if you're curious, these are mostly European faculty. Again, they've all been approved by the home departments here at NC State. And so you get to kind of experience a little bit different perspective on maybe some course material, which is good. But for the most part, all these faculty are known by us, well known. They've worked for us for many years, and so they're just on site there as well. Okay, so brief note about academics. So as I mentioned, we have about 30 classes we offer throughout the year. If you want to take a look at those classes, this slide at the bottom has a link to our catalog. But pretty much everything is going to fulfill a GEP. And so if you're thinking and planning out, well, when should I do this in my academic career? Sometimes it's tricky if you wait until like your senior year, because most of the time by that point, you've already fulfilled all your GEPs. If you need something like that's really specific to your major in order to graduate, if you have a couple classes left, it's usually kind of tricky to find that in Prague. So it becomes difficult to study abroad in our programs at that point. So usually, like when you need GEPs, first 2-3 years, it usually works out pretty well. And so we have classes that meet pretty much all the different GEP categories. And so you can again take a look at that in the catalog, and it'll show you which category it fulfills as well. Last point here about classes, which is pretty neat. We only schedule those pretty much to meet Monday through Thursday. And so you may on occasion have a Friday meeting, like a makeup class or a field trip. But for the most part, you'll have long 3-day weekends every weekend of your program. So that gives you a chance to travel abroad, explore Prague, do whatever you wish. But this is a study abroad program. We want to make sure you have the opportunities to explore your environment and travel. With that, I'll go ahead and pause here. I'll pass it over to Maggie so we can hear a little bit more from our alums.
So now I want to give the floor to Tyra and Delaney again to talk a little bit about their experience with academics. So perhaps y'all can touch upon what classes you took or how they kind of fulfilled your degree requirements and how that fit into your overall degree plan. And then maybe touch upon what a day in the life kind of looked like while you were in Prague taking classes, kind of getting to and from the center, that kind of thing. So again, whoever wants to go first, but if y'all could share some information on that.
Yeah, I can go first. So while I was in Prague, I took a photography class, fashion photography, which I really enjoyed and didn't think that it was gonna necessarily fit for me. But it was something I was interested in, and my advisor got it to work for my like arts and letters requirement. So that was fun. So definitely if there's like a class that you're interested in but aren't sure if it'll necessarily fit into anything, sometimes your advisor can find a way to work around that. And then also while I was there, I took food and society, which was such a fun class. We ended up going to like a brewery. So there were lots of field trips included, and they would bring like bread and we would get to like cook in the kitchen. And then of course I took a literature class as an English literature major with Blanca. And Blanca was probably one of my favorite professors while I was there. She was the coolest and just had like a different perspective on everything. And as for getting to class, I lived in Bogitska, which I don't know if all the time students live in Bogitska, but it was just a short little metro ride to like the historical center, and then it was like maybe like a block or two away from the center, but it was a really fun day, and there's lots of restaurants around the center, so you'll always find something to eat. And normally there's like pretty good breaks between your classes if you plan them right, so you have time to like go grab lunch. And then what was different between the classes in Prague and then classes here is that the professors encouraged breaks during our class time, so we would just like get to go downstairs and get coffee during class. So it was really a relaxed environment, which was so nice because it made it feel more comfortable, like being in a new city and everything. So I really appreciated that part.
Yeah, and so I lived in ZH, which is affordable there as well. And it had two grocery stores really close, and then a train stop really close. And we just opened that morning, and like I was saying, we had to go to the center. And I took because I was a freshman, I took sociology, European politics, astronomy, Czech language, and like an immersion course, like USC course. And it was great. I was studying in this environment. The professors were so nice and understanding to us people's stories. And I had a really great time. As for what it fulfilled, I was basically fulfilling my GEPs. Like I said, I was an exploratory, so I wasn't really in my major yet. So I was just trying to see like what can I fulfill, and it worked out. And so all the classes transfer over, and some of them like my Czech language course I checked.
Think we may have Delaney lost you or having a little technical difficulties. I don't know if you can hear us. Okay, maybe while Delaney's getting that set up, Maggie, do you want to did we have anything else on that, or should we just continue?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I think, yeah, I think they covered it, so that's great.
Cool,
Yeah.
sweet. So we'll hear. Thank you. Thanks, y'all. We'll hear more from them as we continue. So so we just looked at our classic program. It's our main program again we run throughout the year, but we do have a handful of other really interesting programs that we offer. These as you can see from the slide here are offered in specific terms. So the first one is called our Prague Connect program. Now this is unique, and it's just those available for those who are starting the spring Connect term. So this is for newly admitted NC State students. So most folks won't be eligible for this one. But if you're on this call and you're basically in that category and you're part of the spring admission class and thinking about that, definitely come next week to that Connect session that we advertised earlier. So we won't go too much more into that program today. Next program is the Global Leadership Minor. It's offered just in the spring. This is probably our most unique program. In that you earn 12 credits towards a 15 credit minor, the Global Leadership and Team Decision Making minor. It's also really unique in that it's the only program that does not take place fully in Prague. As you can see there, this takes place across 3 different countries. So Czech Republic being one of them, and then usually we have a variety of other countries. We've taken students to Austria, to the United Kingdom, to France, to Germany, and it usually changes every year. So that's a pretty cool program. You spend that together as a small but tight, intimate cohorts. You travel together. You're with your faculty really closely, and you do a lot of sort of site visits and things like that. So this is a really cool program. Again, if you're on this call and thinking, yeah, I want to hear more about that, come next week to our that virtual session that's going to be offered as we advertised earlier. Last few programs take place in the summer. And so, as I mentioned, the summer is our busiest time of the year. It's really exciting, really great. It's also to be, of course, really anywhere in the summer in the Northern Hemisphere because you have long sunny days. Prague and Europe being no different. So it's an exciting time to be there. And we have, in addition to the classic program, we have what's called our Engineering 101 program. This is more for engineering students who need to take that required Intro to Engineering and Problem Solving course. So if you're thinking about that, that's the program for you. It basically works that you take that class, plus you pick one other from among those in our catalog. Other program is our internship program. This is a fairly new one. It's only going to be in the 3rd year running here. But this is a 7-week summer program. It takes place during the same time as the classic one, but just starts a week earlier. And this is the bulk of this is your internship. And so what happens with this is you work closely with our internship director, who places you according to your interests as best he can with a certain company in Prague. And usually these companies have sort of a global profile, and you get a lot of substantive experience. You're not just there making coffee or anything silly like that. You're getting real experience, and you're also earning NC State credit. So you get signed up for this one class that gives you 6 credit hours towards your elective. Really popular program. We always get a lot of interest in this one because of that internship component, and that takes place also in the summer. Finally, we have what we call the faculty-led programs. Now, these are structured a little bit differently than our other main programs, in that these are led by specific faculty members, and they typically are more focused on a particular academic discipline or interest area. So, for instance, we have this summer on offer a Shakespeare and performance program, where students take 2 literature courses that focus on Shakespeare, theater, performative aspects, and you get to basically do some really cool site visits, meeting other actors, local actors, comparative analysis of these things in the Czech and local European environment versus American. So that's really cool, and that's run by a faculty who's also a director at the theater here on campus. So that's cool. That's one of them. Other one is the struggle of the free press. This is a really interesting sort of comparison between press freedom and political freedom. So the question being, how it relates to like a fairly new democracy like the Czech Republic. And so this is a really interesting course. So again, kind of more focused on academic areas, but these are 2 examples of our faculty-led programs that take place in the summer. These tend to be shorter. So if you're thinking, hey, I want to do something maybe not quite as long as 5, 6, 7 weeks, these typically range about 2 to 3 weeks. And so that's our faculty-led. We probably will be expanding that portfolio next year. So we'll have a couple maybe in the science kind of area. So that's still TBD. So that's sort of a quick look at our other programs. All this stuff, by the way, that we're talking about today, you can find also in some form or fashion on our webpage. So if you want to kind of go more into depth in these things, definitely would route you there. Highly encourage that. Okay. So program activities. So this is all our programs. They're study abroad programs. The idea is not just to chain you to a desk in a classroom for the full term. That'd be silly to do that halfway across the world. We obviously want to give you experience outside of the classroom, and we want you to engage with that. And to that end, we do have program activities built in throughout your time there. Some of these are mandatory, some are optional. For instance, the orientation, when you first arrive, we get you oriented into your new environment. It could take place over a day, 2 to 3 days, depends on your program. But by the end of it, you're confident, you're informed, you know a bit more about your surroundings, and you're more familiar with what you need to know. So orientation is an example of something required. We do have a Czech language and culture immersion crash course. This is more for conversational learning, not like, highly structured grammar lessons. It's just to give you a few, phrases and basic comfort with the language. Now, might be a nice relief for people on this call. You do not need to know any Czech really to kind of live and be there in Prague. Prague is very cosmopolitan. English is widely spoken. In fact, it's really catered to the tourist in a lot of ways. And so we do have that sort of privilege of being able to English speakers to get around pretty easily without knowing much of the local language. But if you know some, it always helps and always kind of endears you to the locals. So we do give you a crash course at the beginning of most programs. Czech cooking classes or optional activities we offer throughout the year. We do then have lots of cultural events. Prague is rich in opportunities for cultural events. There's so much to do, and so our staff does a great job over there of planning these things, buying tickets if necessary, and just making it really easy for you to engage in those types of things. And so that will be throughout your program. Again, most of those are optional. You can participate as much or as little as you like in those things. And finally, excursions. And so each program will have a trip, basically what we call an excursion. Depending on your program, this will be either an in-country trip or both an in-country and out-of-country trip. So for our longer semester-long programs, like our classic summer, spring and fall, we do a trip outside the Czech Republic. In fact, the students there currently are going next week to their out-of-country trip, and that's going to be in Poland. We also, for that program and every program really, we take students to a place called Český Krumlov. This is our in-country trip. It's in the south of the country, close to Austria, in this, probably it's fair to say, fairy tale-like magical sort of beautiful small town. It's a UNESCO heritage site. You can actually see a couple pictures here on this slide, but it's one of the coolest places I've been to, and it's definitely where we take all students and all our programs all the time. And so there's good reason for that. And when you do see it, you'll know why. So that's all built into the program, all these things. It's part of what you pay for already. And again, designed to really get you engaged beyond the classroom. Yeah. So last kind of slide here, informational slide, before I pass it back over to Maggie, is about housing. And so if you're wondering, well, how does this look with accommodations? Do I just land in Prague and have to figure it out on my own? So it's really easy with accommodations. We have these kind of blocks set out already. So we have housing already lined up. We use pretty much the same buildings every cycle, and you're all grouped together. So essentially you have your own dorm as NC State program participants. And so this picture up here at the top is one of our housing units. It's basically like an apartment block, and it's just for you all. So we have several of these throughout the city. Tyra mentioned Belgická, that's one. For our bigger programs, like in the summer, we do have to sort of expand out, but this is one called Cyfrtova. We always use this one, and it's really, really, really close to the center. But all of our places, all of our housing will have everything included in terms of furniture and bedding. It'll be ready to go for you. They'll all have shared kitchen space available. You'll have laundry facilities available, all the stuff you expect, like when you're in Raleigh in the dorms. So you'll have all those things to support you there too. Typically the setup is you have a roommate, and typically a couple rooms will share a bathroom. And there's some alternative arrangements to that as well, but for the most part, that's the default setup. So again, it's like dorm living in Prague. But again, this is where you all will be. You won't be neighbored with some locals. We don't know who they are. You're going to be all together. Again, that's sort of the supportive elements of the program. So you get to kind of share that experience, the housing experience together as well. Yeah. And of course, these are going to be conveniently close to tram stops. We won't talk about that much here, but getting throughout the city, you use public transportation really easily. It's a great system. Tram, subway, buses, and these are going to be really close to those things for your convenience. Okay, let me pause and catch my breath, and with that, I'll pass it to Maggie.
Yeah, and just to touch on that last thing, I know we'll go over kind of what's included and what's not included in the program cost. But one of those things that I always like to highlight to students is that you will included in the program cost is an in-city transportation pass. A lot of the students, when they're over, that's kind of the fun part of it is getting to experience public transportation. Some students for the first time, but that is included. So you'll be able to use the tram stop, like Alex mentioned, especially outside of Cyfrtova. It's right down the street. But you'll also be able to use the subway or the metro, as well as the bus system. So that's kind of a fun perk of not only living in Prague, but also living in these dorms and being so close to accessing that. But yeah, I wanted to bring Tyra in. Delaney let me know she's having some computer difficulties, so I don't think she'll be able to join us for the rest of the session. But yeah, Tyra, so you have the floor to kind of talk a little bit about your experience with housing. Perhaps you can talk about maybe how it was different, housing in Prague versus housing in Raleigh and even on campus. Maybe what your commute was like. I know you touched on that a little bit in your last kind of session, but yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about that and maybe your roommate and how all that worked out for you.
Yeah, so like I said, I lived in Belgická, which originally I was going to live in Zytram, but we had like a little switch up at the end so we could accommodate like a COVID room because we still needed that at the time that I went. And so in Belgitska, I only had three roommates, which is different than like what some of the other people in Belgitska had. Some of them had like five or four other roommates, or maybe more. I don't know, but I just remember that we got really lucky only having like the four of us. But in Bogitska, like we had our own kitchen, we had our own private bathroom, and then there was laundry downstairs. And the security and like staffing were like very good. I remember like there were people who were kind of rowdy above us, and they were always like on top of that because there is like a noise ordinance, which I remember very clearly because I feel like oftentimes like as Americans we're a little bit louder than we tend to realize. So we had to like learn that as we went along. And I would say for the laundry, it was interesting because a lot of times like we're used to not carrying cash, I guess, in the US a little bit, but the laundry only took like coins and stuff. So that was like the one thing that I was always shocked by. But we were always really close to like coffee shops, and on our way to like the tram in the morning, we would stop by this little place called Vanille, and we would get something there. And we were super close to like the Christmas markets when they opened, which was really nice, and got to experience those. But yeah, so like traveling around the city was super easy. You could get anywhere in like 15 minutes, even if that. Most of the places you needed to be were a little bit less than 30 to get around. But and as for like grocery stores and stuff, there was like a small little like convenience store and then other grocery stores a little bit further, but it was still really convenient on the public transportation.
Yeah, following up on that real quick, how quickly or not quickly did you adjust to using public transportation in Prague?
It was really easy actually, since we mostly used the metro because we were closer to a metro than a tram. The metro only had three lines, I believe, and so it was super easy to like recognize like where you were going, and like even though like the sign was sometimes in check, there would be like a little figure of like the castle so you know like which direction you were headed in kind of, and then some other like markers of like things that would be nearby. So it was really easy to acclimate. Like I'd used public transportation before, but I know that a lot of other people found it easy, and even the tram system was easier, even though there are a few more carts.
Great, thank you. And that's all, Alex, if you want to.
Yeah, sure. Great. Tyra, you'll be happy to know that we've actually since gotten rid of the coin system. So no more coins for laundry. So that's convenient.
That is so
Uh,
exciting because that was like my biggest pet peeve.
yeah. So that's inconvenient. So we got rid of. Also, you were in one of the housing units that had were bigger rooms with more roommates for sure. Most of our stuff like this, like the Zytrum, like that you're seeing here, you just have one roommate for most folks. So, but yeah, depending on sort of the program you're on and the housing needs, we might have you somewhere different. But this is the sort of the standard setup here. Yeah, awesome. So going from that, so let's shift over now to take a look at costs. So we looked sort of in this. Let me just backtrack. In this slide, you can see the costs here of the classic program, the semester versions plus the summer version, and you can see as well on these other programs we do have at the bottom of each little segment there. You can see the costs of each of those respective programs as well. But it's worth going into a little bit what that includes and what that does not include. So when we have a cost listed there, what that's going to entail, the big items really it's going to be your tuition and your housing. Those are the two biggest things that you're paying for in that what we call program cost. It's really a package of different things. So again, all your tuition, your accommodations, they're in there. There's some other smaller things as well. So you'll be covered with international GeoBlue health insurance for the full duration of your time abroad. You don't need to do anything really on your own for that. We enroll you for the whole program that you're there, and you can have that coverage as well if you travel, say, one weekend to Italy or one weekend to Germany. It's going to cover you for the full region. That's all part of it too, and something you pay for in the costs of the program. And you can see from this list here, I won't go through every item, but you can see what else it includes. Those excursions, those trips I mentioned at the beginning that are part of the program, when you go on those things, when you travel, you have to pay for lodging, you have to pay for getting there and getting back. And so all that's for the official program excursions, that's all built into the program cost already. And then, yeah, you can see the rest there. And what Maggie mentioned, that really important transportation pass that you get, that's an awesome thing. It covers you for the full time you're there, and you just hop on and hop off of any form of transportation in the city. But we'll hand that to you during the orientation when you're in Prague. And that's something you pay for again already in the program cost. So shifting to the other column. So what is not included in that program cost? The biggest things would be the flights and your food. And let me just touch upon those a little bit more. So for any of the programs we talked about today, we basically, NC State Prague, we do not arrange group flights for a number of reasons. So basically, when you're arranging flights, and I'm going to assume everyone's flying, I don't know how else, if you want to take a boat over there, be my guest, but you're going to fly over there, you're going to want to arrange that on your own. And so that's something you just would purchase on your own whenever you want. If you've ever looked at flights or purchased flights, there can be a lot of variation in the fares. One day the same flight may be different than the next day, or even by the hour. So we want to give you all the freedom to do that when you're comfortable and on the route that you're comfortable on. So some may want 2 stops, some may insist on just 1 stop. So anyway, so you just would arrange the flight on your own. The only thing that you have to be considerate of is when to arrive in Prague. And so for all of our programs, when you go into our program pages, you'll see on our timetable, you see something called an arrival day. And that's just what it sounds like. So that's the day that we would expect you to physically arrive in Prague. And that basically marks the start of each program. So when you see a program date, that's the arrival date. And so as long as you're there physically, doesn't matter how you get there, we want to see you on that day, and that's basically something that you would arrange. So that's the biggest item in terms of expenses, not included in the program cost. The next thing is food. And so I think Tara talked about it a little bit. She alluded to the kind of going out and meals and stuff. So, and you may have already assumed this, but in Prague, it's all smaller scale in terms of the students there and the facilities. And so you're not going to go there expecting, hopefully, to see a fountain dining hall. That would be awesome if there was one there. So we don't have any meal plans. There's nothing like that arranged. And so when you're there, you're free to kind of do meals how you want. And that usually looks like, especially if you're there for a full semester for a long time, you'll get used to going to the grocery store, buying your groceries, probably like you do here in Raleigh, making your meals and so on. In the housing in the dorms, as well as in the center, where you take your classes, you have fully furnished kitchens to support that as well. If you want to do meal prep, we even have fridges in the center. You can bring your meals and store them there. So that's all designed to kind of enable that. But meals, there'll be some occasionally, we'll have some official kind of like welcome meals and farewell meals, but for the most part, you're expected to pay out of pocket for that. And that gives you the freedom to do what you want. Some folks like to go out to eat more. So it just depends on your preferences there. And you can see the rest of what's not included, like your textbooks and things like that. A quick note on passports and visas. We don't talk too much today about like immigrant or travel documents. We'll talk about that more later if and when you advance further in your interests in the program. But I can tell you that for all of our programs, you have to have a passport. No surprise there, right? Any international travel, you need that passport. So if you're thinking, I'm going to be applying in the spring or pretty soon, you want to think about if you don't have a passport yet, or if you have one expiring that you need to renew, you want to think about that as your first steps, because passport is a requirement, of course. Now, the visa, and the visa is something that's only for basically two of our programs. So if you're coming on our classic spring or our classic fall programs, then you basically you have to have a visa. And so that comes with a little bit of a fee, and so that's why we include that here on this list. So again, we won't go too much into that at all, really, not until if we see you down the road. So, but yeah, so you can see here a quick breakdown of what's included, what's not. If you want to have further details, we've put a link at the bottom of the page. You can also go to that same web page, and you can see a nice table breaking down all of our programs and what the costs are as well. All right, y'all. So we're coming sort of towards the end, at least of the slide part of the session, and so we just want to close here by emphasizing the spring application cycle. We do, as I mentioned, we have programs running throughout the year. So the spring, summer, and fall. With each of those cycles has its respective application period, and so currently, for instance, the fall is closed. Except for this Connect program, which is unique. Fall's closed and summer's closed. So nothing's currently really open, except next month we'll be starting to open the spring. And so that's why we emphasize this here. So if you're thinking spring, 2025, that is, the application will open on the 15th of April. And then we'll basically have that open for about 5 months. So it'll close in mid-September. So anytime in that period, you can apply. For pretty much most of our programs, we do not, for most of them, we don't have a rolling process. For instance, like our classic semester programs, we have just one deadline and we review everybody's at the same time afterwards. So just for the spring coming up, the spring cycle, that's how that works. So you can get your application in on April 16th, you can get it in on September 14th. We'll still review it no matter what. All right, so that's your window of time if you're thinking spring. If you're thinking like longer term, like I want to maybe, later on, I want to go for summer or fall 2025, just go to our website and you can see what those application dates will be, but that's a little bit too early. So we're just focusing on spring today. Last thing, scholarships. So really important. The NC State Study Abroad Office, they maintain an application process for the NC State Scholarship. So the university has a lot of money to give away for folks who are studying abroad with NC State. And so all you have to do really is submit a really easy application. It doesn't cost anything. It's really simple, really quick. And you may be eligible for a scholarship. Now, these award amounts are, roughly in the range of $1,000 to $3,000 to $4,000. So it's not going to probably cover your full program cost, but it won't hurt, right? So, and you stand a pretty decent chance of getting something. So definitely encourage you to check that out. Those have the separate application process and separate deadlines. Okay, so if you're thinking about applying for a program, these are your simple steps on how to apply. Basically, everything is online. So you can apply fully in our online system. It's what we call the PAC Abroad portal. So if you want to know how to do that, just go to our website, find the program that you're interested in. That program will have its own page. On that page, you'll see somewhere a red Apply Now button. Just click that, and that'll guide you to the PAC Abroad portal, and you can just submit everything online. So yeah, so again, application materials submitted online. You probably won't have much interface with us during that process unless you want to or need help. And that's certainly what we're here for, to help support. But it's not like you have to come in here and physically drop off an application. All right. So again, questions on that if you end up starting one and working through one, reach out to us if you get to that stage. With that, I will pass it back over to Maggie so we can hear more from Tyra.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm also aware of time. I know we've got about 14 or so minutes left, so I don't want to take too much of your time, because I want to make sure that y'all have an opportunity to ask questions if you have any, whether that's in the chat or aloud. But yeah, I did want to let Tyra kind of talk a little bit more about her experience. I had some questions, and again, we'll have time for Q&A at the end if you have any specific ones. But to start, Tyra, why did you choose to study abroad with NC State Prague? What was kind of your reasoning and motivation behind that?
Yeah, so I chose to study abroad, specifically NC State Prague. I knew I wanted to study abroad in general, but I had never traveled internationally before. And I didn't really want to have to worry about whether or not my classes were going to transfer. So for me, it was really the decision came to whether or not I was going to be with a group of NC State students and whether or not I was for sure that my classes were going to transfer. So those were the big deciding factors for me. And then I found out that um, a couple people I already knew were going. So it was, just something I knew that I would be comfortable doing and not really scared and up in the air and having to immerse alone.
Sorry, I was muted, but yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. Following up on that, so you were talking about traveling. Did you travel at all outside of Prague during your semester? And if so, kind of how did you balance the travel time with your academics and with your course schedule?
Yeah, so I went to Italy over fall break and I went to Vienna over a long weekend that we had. So I really think that the key for me, and I also went to Berlin, which was one of our excursions, so that was already kind of pre-planned for us. But balancing the academics really came to like picking like a weekend where I knew that my schedule wasn't going to be as full, like I didn't have like a big test to study for or have like a lot of homework to do. And then also taking advantage of fall break because it's a wonderful time to go travel and do something because you have a whole week plus like the weekends on either side. And then also the the professors aren't there to like keep you from traveling. I really think that like they want you to do that. They want you to be able to go out and experience things. So they're not gonna, overload you with work. That's the only reason that I would that I was concerned was because I was taking European politics and that was a little bit out of my comfort zone and I'm an overachiever at times, so I would just really hammer myself into that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing. So then looking overall back at your experience, both with traveling, with academics, with the program in its entirety, how do you think this experience in Prague impacted your overall college experience? And perhaps did it, and then how did it impact your, future career endeavors or motivations beyond college?
Yeah, so I have friends that are gonna last for a lifetime now. We all got really close, and I think that was like one of the biggest things was, being able to like come back to Raleigh and still have like the people that I grew so close to and still be able to hang out with them and bond over our shared experiences. Um, and then I think for my work experience, so right after I got back from Prague, I started interning at the Women's Center. And so the Women's Center does a alternative service break trip to Guatemala. And so next spring, I will hopefully be one of the leads on that. So that is just one of the things that I think study abroad has allowed me to do is kind of have like a cultural competency and be able to kind of, understand and be respectful of different cultures and have the background of like traveling internationally. So I can use that to help with the alternative service break and be able to give whatever skills that I got from going to Prague to that.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Tyra.
All right, cool. So that leaves us y'all with about 9 minutes, 10 minutes almost. So as promised, we want to give you the floor now to ask us, and that could be Maggie, myself, or even better, Tyra, any questions that you might have in your mind. So feel free to unmute yourself, fire away, or if you're more comfortable, feel free to write it in the chat. Cool. Well, let me ask you a question, Tyra, then, while we're waiting for others. What was the most surprising thing that you experienced in Prague, or what surprised you the most? It could be, any way you want to take it.
I think the biggest thing that surprised me was actually the weather. Because it was like late November and it all of a sudden got incredibly cold. Like I have never experienced temperatures like that before, and I didn't bring like a coat with me. So when we were on fall break, I decided to like buy one, because I just didn't realize how cold it was gonna be, and the snow, it just like kept snowing once it started, and it didn't let up. So I think that was the most surprising because I just didn't imagine that it would snow like that because I had never experienced anything like that. But Prague looks so beautiful in the snow. So it was really nice to be able to see that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, so if you're thinking about, well, what's the best time of year to go? I mean, it's like it's really in Prague. It's beautiful all around. I would say there's pros to kind of every year, but every time of the year. But it's always, you can think of it in terms of rally by comparison. It's going to be kind of cooler whatever time of year. So like in the winter, it's going to be colder. The winter's here. No surprise. You'll see snow like we don't really see here anymore. We didn't see any this past winter. I'm a little bit unhappy about that. Summers will be, warm. You can get hot there, but you won't have like the humidity that you have here in North Carolina. And of course, spring and fall, they're beautiful too. But yeah, expect to have a little cooler weather by comparison to Raleigh any time of year. Yeah. So there's a few of you guys left. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. Shout them out. Of course, you're more than welcome to go if you want, but we'll be here for another couple minutes if you have any questions. No such thing as a dumb question.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
So I'm in like a science major kind of, and I can take a lot of my GEPs at Prague, but I was wondering if you can also take like an online course offered by NC State at Prague as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this. And so that's a common question. So the short answer is yes. You can take like a D or online course while you're in Prague. As long as it's like, just like one class, it's not, the majority of your class load, that's a-okay with us, as long as you're fine with it and you check with your academic advisor. The only thing that you have to be mindful of though is anytime you take a DE class or online course, that comes with a separate tuition charge. Because it's charged by a different unit at a different rate. And so you basically have to pay for that, whatever that may be, in addition to the program costs. We're unable basically to kind of build that in or work that into the program costs. So as long as you're fine with that, with paying a little extra for it, then there's no problem, no restriction on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, any others? There's a few of you left. Anyone else with a question, burning question? If you want to ask about nightlife, whatever, it's a common question. Anything at all? Okay. So let's see here. All right. So thanks, Landon. All right, cool. Well, we'll stop the sharing.